The purpose. The life of man upon earth is a warfare. Job 7:1. What follows is for those who want to change the world from what it is to what they believe it should be. The Prince was written by Machiavelli for the haves on how to hold power. Rules for Radicals is written for the have-nots on how to take it away. In this book, we are concerned with how to create mass organizations to seize power and give it to the people, to realize the democratic dream of equality, justice, peace, cooperation, equal and full opportunities for education, full and use employment, health, and the creation of those circumstances in which men can have the chance to live by values that give meaning to life. We're talking about a mass power organization which will change the world into a place where all men and women walk erect in the spirit of that credo of the Spanish Civil War. Better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. This means revolution. The significant changes in history have been made by revolutions. There are people who say that it is not a revolution, but evolution that brings about change. But evolution is simply the term used by non-participants to denote a particular sequence of revolutions as they synthesized into specific major social change. In this book, I propose certain general observations, propositions and concepts of the mechanics of mass movements and the various stages of the cycle of action and reaction in revolution. This is not an ideological book except insofar as argument for change, rather than for the status quo, can be called an ideology. Different people in different places, in different situations, in different times, will construct their own solutions and symbols of salvation for those times. This book will not contain any panacea or dogma. I detest and fear dogma. I know that all revolutions must have ideologies to spur them on. That in the heat of conflict, these ideologies tend to be smelted into rigid dogmas, claiming exclusive possessions of the truth, and the keys to paradise is tragic. Dogma is the enemy of human freedom. Dogma must be watched for and apprehended at every turn and twist of the revolutionary movement. The human spirit glows from that small inner light of doubt whether we are right, while those who believe with complete certainty that they possess the right are dark inside and darken the world outside with cruelty, pain, and injustice. Those who enshrine the poor or have-nots are as guilty as other dogmatists and just as dangerous. To diminish the danger, the ideology will deteriorate into dogma, and to protect the free, open, questioning, and creative mind of man, as well as to allow for change. No ideology should be more specific than that of America's founding fathers for the general welfare. Niels Bohr, the great atomic physicist, admirably stated the civilized position on dogmatism. Every sentence I utter must be understood not as an affirmation, but as a question. I will argue that man's hopes lie in the acceptance of the great law of change, that the general understanding of the principles of change will provide clues for rational action and an awareness of the realistic relationship between means and ends and how each determines the other. I hope that these pages will contribute to the education of the radicals of today and to the conversion of hot, emotional, impulsive passions that are impotent and frustrating to actions that will be calculated, purposeful, and effective. An example of the political insensitivity of many of today's so-called radicals and the lost opportunities is found in this account of an episode during the trial of the Chicago 7. Over the weekend, some 150 lawyers from all parts of the country had gathered in Chicago to picket the federal building in protest against Judge Hoffman's arrest of the 4 lawyers. This delegation, which was supported by 13 members of the faculty of Harvard Law School, and which included a number of other professors as well, submitted a brief as friend of the court, which called Judge Hoffman's actions a travesty of justice, which threatens to destroy the confidence of the American people and the entire judicial process. By 10 o'clock, the angry lawyers had begun to march around the federal building, where they were joined by hundreds of student radicals, several Black Panthers, and 100 or more blue-helmeted Chicago police. Shortly before noon, About 40 of the picketing lawyers carried their signs into the lobby of the federal building, despite the notice posted on the glass wall beside the entrance and signed by Judge Campbell forbidding such demonstrations within the building. Hardly had the lawyers entered, however, than Judge Campbell himself descended to the lobby dressed in his black robes and accompanied by a marshal, a stenographer, and his court clerk. Surrounded by the angry lawyers, who were themselves encircled by a ring of police and federal marshals, the judge proceeded to hold court then and there. He announced that unless the pickets withdrew immediately, he would charge them with contempt. This time, he warned, there could be no question that their contempt would occur in the presence of the court, and would thus be subject to summary punishment. No sooner had he made this announcement, however, than a voice from the throng shouted, "Fuck you, Campbell." After a moment of tense silence followed by a cheer from the crowd and a noticeable stiffening among the police, Judge Campbell himself withdrew. Then the lawyers too left the lobby and rejoined the pickets on the sidewalk. Jason Epstein, The Great Conspiracy Trial, Random House, 1917. The picketing lawyers threw away a beautiful opportunity to create a nationwide issue. Offhand, there would seem to have been two choices, either of which would have forced the judge's hand and kept the issue going. One of the lawyers could have stepped up to the judge after the voice said, "Fuck you, Campbell," said that the lawyers there did not support personal obscenities, but they were not leaving. Or all the lawyers together could have chorused with one voice, "Fuck you, Campbell." They did neither. Instead, they let the initiative pass from them to the judge and achieved nothing. Radicals must be resilient, adaptable to shifting political circumstances, and sensitive enough to the process of action and reaction to avoid being trapped by their own tactics and forced to travel a road not of their choosing. In short, radicals must have a degree of control over the flow of events. Here I propose to present an arrangement of certain facts and general concepts of change, a step toward a science of revolution. All societies discourage and penalize ideas and writings that threaten the ruling status quo. It is understandable, therefore, that the literature of a have society is a veritable desert whenever we look for writings on social change. Once the American Revolution was done with, we can find very little besides the right of revolution that is laid down in the Declaration of Independence as a fundamental right. 73 years later, Thoreau briefs essay, The Duty of Civil Disobedience, followed by Lincoln's reaffirmation of the revolutionary right in 1861. Footnote, Lincoln's first inaugural. This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or the revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it. End of the footnote. There are many phrases extolling the sacredness of revolution, that is, revolutions of the past. Our enthusiasm for the sacred right of revolution is increased and enhanced with the passage of time. The older the revolution, the more it recedes into history, the more sacred it becomes. Except for Thoreau's limited remarks, our society has given us few words of advice, few suggestions of how to fertilize social change. From the haves, on the other hand, there has come an unceasing flood of literature justifying the status quo. Religious, economic, social, political, and legal tracts endlessly attack all revolutionary ideas and action for change as immoral, fallacious, and against God, country, and mother. These literary sedations by the status quo include the threat that, since all such movements are unpatriotic, subversive, spawned in hell, and reptilian in their creeping insidiousness, dire punishments will be meted out to their supporters. All great revolutions, including Christianity, the various reformations, democracy, capitalism, and socialism, have suffered these epithets in the times of their birth. To the status quo concerned about its public image, revolution is the only force which has no image, but instead casts a dark, ominous shadow of things to come. The have-nots of the world, swept up in the present upheavals and desperately seeking revolutionary writings can find such literature only from the communists, both red and yellow. Here they can read about tactics, maneuvers, strategy, and principles of action in the making of revolutions. Since in this literature all ideas are embedded in the language of communism, revolution appears synonymous with communism. Footnote: U.S. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, The U.S. and Revolution. Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions, occasional paper number 116. On trips to Asia, I often asked men in their 30s and 40s what they were reading when they were 18. They usually answered Karl Marx, and when I asked them why, they replied, "We were under colonial rule, seeking a way out. We wanted our independence. To get it, we had to make revolution. The only books on revolution were published by the communists. These men almost invariably had repudiated communism as a political cut, retaining, however, a tinge of socialism. As I talked with them, I came to realize the great opportunities we missed when we became preoccupied in fighting communism with bombs and with dollars rather than with the ideas of revolution, of freedom, of justice." End of footnote. When, in the throes of the revolutionary fervor, the have-nots hungrily turned to us in their first steps from starvation to subsistence, we respond with a bewildering, unbelievable, and meaningless conglomeration of abstractions about freedom, morality, equality, and the danger of intellectual enslavement by communistic ideology. This is accompanied by charitable handouts dressed up in ribbons of moral principle and freedom, with the price tag of unqualified political loyalty to us. With the coming of the revolutions in Russia and China, we suddenly underwent a moral conversion and became concerned for the welfare of our brothers all over the world. Revolution by the have-nots has a way of inducing a moral revelation among the haves. Revolution by the have-nots also induces a paranoid fear. Now, therefore, we find every corrupt and repressive government the world around saying to us, "Give us money and soldiers, or there will be a revolution, and the new leaders will be your enemies." Fearful of revolution and identifying ourselves as the status quo, we have permitted the communists to assume by default the revolutionary halo of justice for the have-nots. We then compound this mistake by assuming that the status quo everywhere must be defended but stressed against revolution. Today, revolution has become synonymous with communism, while capitalism is synonymous with status quo. Occasionally, we will accept the revolution if it's guaranteed to be on our side, and then only when we realize that the revolution is inevitable. We abhor revolutions. We have permitted a suicidal situation to unfold wherein revolution and communism have become one. These pages are committed to splitting this political atom, separating this exclusive identification of communism with revolution. If it were possible for the have-nots of the world to recognize and accept the idea that revolution did not inevitably mean hate and war, cold or hot, from the United States, that alone would be a great revolution in world politics and the future of man. This is a major reason for my attempts to provide a revolutionary handbook not cast in a communist or capitalist mode, but as a manual for the have-nots of the world, regardless of the colors of their skin or their politics. My aim here is to suggest how to organize for power, how to get it, and to use it. I will argue that the failure to use power for a more equitable distribution of the means of life for all people signals the end of the revolution and the start of the counter-revolution. Revolution has always advanced with an ideological spare, just as the status quo has inscribed its ideology upon its shield. All of life is partisan. There is no dispassionate objectivity. The revolutionary ideology is not confined to a specific limited formula. It is a series of general principles, rooted in Lincoln's May 19, 1856 statement. Be not deceived. Revolutions do not go backward.